Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about something completely new in the Vancouver release. It is Spoke Generator. Now, special props and shout out to Durav and Ashutosh, who has already done a really fantastic video about this feature. I'm going to link it somewhere up here so you can go and have a look and watch for yourselves. Now, I'm going to give it a go myself because, like I said, I watched that video and it got me really interested to seeing what's possible using this new plugin or new store app, and we'll take it from there. Right, so Spoke Generator. Let's just see what it is. Let's talk to what actually is this store app all about. So like I say, it's new to Vancouver. It's all about automating integration tasks. So you know in the past where you had to use the likes of your web services, you have to create your your REST message, and there's a whole host of things you have to do around the authentication and the endpoints and all the different parameters and headers and different things that you'd have to do in there. And you can, if it's a outbound integration, you have to call that out through a script, or it may well be that you create the likes of actions from scratch using Flow Designer, an integration hub. So this is what this is all about. This is all about automating a lot of that. Now there is a aspect of this that we're going to be touching on called specifications. Now I am completely new to specifications, by the way, and it's specifically OpenAPI specification. This has come from what was formerly known as Swagger specification, and it's like a well-known standard for describing RESTful APIs. So what this is all about is just making this more visible and usable for those who are not, tech savvy or people who haven't built integrations before. We want to make it easier, right? We want to make building integrations easier, quicker, and we want to be able to automate this as much as we can. So that's what we're going to do during this demonstration. We're going to show you the Spoke Generator API. It's not an API at all. It's an app. We're going to start and use one of the open source APIs out there, and we're just going to give it a go and see what happens. What's the worst that could happen?
Failure.
First of all, how do we get it? How do we get Spoke Generator? Is it free? Is it available to anybody? Is it available on PDIs? And the answer is yes, to most of those. So Spoke Generator you can find in your kind of plugins list or in the store applications. I've already installed it on my Vancouver release, I think patch 2, hotfix 1 or something. And yes, it's searchable. You can go get it. You can go install it. What I would say is from a licensing perspective, yes, you can go install it, but again, this is going to be something that is available to those with Integration Hub Pro, as you could probably expect, because obviously this is dealing with RESTful APIs and integrations, and typically that's what tends to come with iHub Pro. So now we know where to get it and how to install it. We will go into the nitty-gritty, but before we do that, we need to plan what we want to do with it. And like I say, Spoke Generator, if we just go across to the docs sites, just to understand a bit more about it, what are the dependencies, what do we need as a kind of prerequisite to kind of setting this up, and what's its limitations. So like I say, Spoke Generator, all about automating integration tasks, and it's all about creating those reusable actions. So this is going to be very heavy on Flow Designer and Flow, and it's all about being able to automatically create those actions for you. So you may have been aware in the past that you got these kind of predefined third-party integrations called spokes. That also has some pre-configured actions built around it, which in essence you can use, and you add in the likes of your credentials and away you go. This is your kind of your quick starter package into integrations. This is about creating your own spokes, your own integrations really quickly. So as I said, we've been through the requesting of the apps on the store, the dependencies being around the iHub Pro, as we are aware of, and There's a few roles, that this will use. There's no brand new roles that's come with this, but the likes of admins will be able to view this information on Flow Designer. So there isn't a brand new module or anything like that. Majority of the functionality, like I say, is built around Flow Designer. They'll have an additional spokes tab, and we'll come to that. We'll see if we can find it, and the ability to create a new spoke. Now here's this first kind of mention of OpenAPI specification. I think this is where a lot of the value is behind this, and we'll come to that next in terms of what that actually means and what it looks like. And those with the Flow Designer read actions can do certain actions as well, but we won't get into that too much. This page goes into a few of the kind of limitations. There's some around the actual, the size limit of the specifications. Again, we'll come back to that. There are limitations in terms of what it can support from the specification. So what we will say is, there's both YAML and JSON. I'm used to kind of JSON payloads when it comes to integrations, especially with REST. I'm not used to YAML at all. I don't know what that looks like. I can't talk to that right now. But we're going to be focusing on JSON. And inside JSON, we have obviously a number of different nested objects. And some of those objects we don't support right now in terms of the app in the store right now. So there is lots of different things which is in this overall JSON payload that we're going to be retrieving and using, which is that specification. And yes, we're going to be looking to see what we can use from that. So some things we will use, some things we won't. And again, this will make sense in a minute once we have a look and see what that specification actually looks like. There's also a maximum number of operations supported. Again, I'm not going to get into that. I'm not sure, we won't see this obviously during the demo, but it's something to bear in mind. So let's just quickly go over some information around the OpenAPI specification. This might be quite small on the screen. Let's just zoom in a touch. So what is it? So this has come from previously known as Swagger specification. I haven't used Swagger much before, to be quite honest with you. I think I signed up to it and not really used it too much. I know it's a very good kind of like OpenAPI platform, a bit like Postman, I guess. You can have a local Swagger client, I think, as well as like on Web one. It's great for documentation of APIs. Lots more that I probably don't even know. It's a great place to kind of collect your APIs, test them out as well. And this is now a kind of standard where a lot of the RESTful APIs are going and integrations are going in the future. So it's good to get on board with this, is what I'm saying. And it's about a kind of machine-readable interface, as it says here, for describing, producing, consuming web services. So in short, basically, it's it's a standard. It's a standard for describing APIs. So it's going to be in a certain format, and it's going to be in that format every single time, pretty much. So now we've kind of discussed around what OpenAPI specification is. How do we use them? How do we get them? Is this something that's going to be made available for all APIs out there in the world? Probably not. It's something that is going to be more and more common. It's definitely a question we should be asking when we're trying to integrate with, different tool sets and third-party software. It's definitely something that is going to be made more available as time goes. Right, so let's have a look. So what I did for this, I wanted to find a good kind of use case for us to using these. And what I found is a website called APIs Guru, which is a fantastic website for viewing, open source APIs that we can just use and try out. So it's got fantastic documentation around it, how to use them APIs, and more importantly, this is what's going to show us the OpenAPI specifications we can use for our use case here. We could, of course, use ServiceNow APIs. There is a way that you can export the likes of the YAML and JSON specifications. And again, shout out to Durav and Ashutosh, who have used that in their use case. They have just used a ServiceNow API. I wanted to go a little bit different and see if I can just use a third-party API and just to see what it kind of looks like, basically. So the one I'm going to try and use is called IP geolocation. And I'm going to just click on JSON here, which is going to open up, in essence, what would be our specification. So this is the specification, and first of all, you're thinking this isn't low code. This is not no code. What are you talking about here? Obviously, this has a certain format, and this is what's going to essentially make this a lot more usable for the low code people, and we'll come back to that very shortly. But I don't want to kind of go through this absolutely verbatim, but like I say, this is all nested objects. It's JSON payload for us to use. What I am going to do is just going to copy all this, because in Swagger there's some fantastic functionality available, and hopefully we'll have this in ServiceNow soon as well, by the way. I'm just going to go to Swagger Hub, and free to sign up to Swagger Hub as well, which I have done. Create a brand new API. I will again maybe zoom in a touch, and I'm going to call this geolocation, and I will create API. And this isn't necessarily, something that is part of what you need to do in ServiceNow, but it's what I'm doing to just show you how you can just make sense of this stuff as well. This is very useful website or area to go to, Swagger Hub, to kind of compartmentalize this big JSON payload to make sense of it. So what this is very good at is, as you can see, I've just pasted in the specification into here, and what's that allowed me to do is view all of this information on the right hand side in a much more readable format. So we know this is a IP geolocation API. It's got a very nice description, so you can start to see where this is coming from in the JSON payload. It's got a nice cool link to API documentation. We'll absolutely need that to, probably we'll need an API key, so we'll probably need to go through the API documentation to understand how it actually works. It's got a list of servers here available that we can actually connect to, or our kind of endpoints. And then we've got under here, under default, we've actually got our endpoints. So this is our API, so we've got a get API. And if there was multiple, then there would be multiple listed in here. This could be multiple different gets, different post or patch or update or whatever else. This is one particular API that's been made available to us through this specification, and is to retrieve the location of an IP address. So again, we don't need to kind of delve deep into code to understanding, what are the endpoints available to us, what are the mandatory things we need as part of this. This is a great way of kind of summarizing exactly what we need in a nice kind of UI. So immediately for this one, which we're going to be trying out, we need a API key. We can specify an IP address and specify what information we need to get back, so whether the country, city, time zone. And I think what's really cool with this as well is the fact that it shows examples. So as part of this kind of specification, it gives you some examples. So if you have done this in the past, where you're working with ServiceNow customers or clients, and they want to consume your APIs, obviously it's very useful to give them examples to show in terms of what you're expecting to come across in their payload. So again, as this is part of this overall kind of schema and specification, you include those examples in there, and you can see this in a really nice readable format, that this is what we're expecting in there, and these are expected response codes. So really cool. I love that. And I don't use this enough. I think this has been available for a long time. So what we do need is, to make this API work in the first place, is this API key. We don't have it available to us, and the way I thought I would get to that information is by reading the documentation. So there is a website here which we can go and look at, run by Abstract, and I'm going to log in because I've already signed up, so bear with me while I do that. Bibbidi bob. Log in, and I need to find my API key. Here it is. Right, so here's my API key. Now, I know for this one, because I've done a little bit of reading up on it a little bit, we're only going to have limited features on here, or limited number of usage, so API calls. It does give you examples of how to call it through JavaScript and things like that, but we don't care about the code right now. That's not what this is all about. This is about the Spoke Generator. We just want to make sure that we do have a workable API to begin with. So to just quickly test that out, I'm just going to go try it out on the right hand side here. If I paste in the API key, this is their example actually. I'm going to put in, I'm happy to share my IP address. Not sure I should, but I might blank this out, who knows. 131. And maybe, let's say we just want city. We just want city. And let's go to execute. And we have our response body. City, Bury St Edmunds. So we know it works. We know our API key works. Again, they've got snippets here to, if you wanted to use it, as opposed to the documentation that's there. Maybe we want to change this to try out country. That's not how you spell country. Country. Execute. United Kingdom. Lovely. We know this is working. Fantastic. Right, next. We want to be able to now use this. So we have this specification. We want to now use it in ServiceNow. How can we use all this information? We've seen it in Swagger Hub, we've seen it used. How do we now use that in a ServiceNow perspective? So let's come over and let's get ourselves into Flow Designer. Flow Designer. Just going to make sure this is zoomed in as well. And wait for that to load. There was no authentication with this one either. Well, other than the API key, of course, which we shall feed into it. And you can see the benefits of this as we kind of go through. So as we can see, our Flow Designer, we've got a new tab here, which we may not have had before without this, or maybe we do. I think we've got the tab there for spokes to see all the spokes available to us. We do now have available create new spoke. So let's do that. Loading Spoke Generator. So this is something that you wouldn't have had without the plugin. And we'll see what options we have available to us. So remember, with spokes, they tend to have their own application scope. Obviously, that's really useful because any updates to that can be very much compartment. That's the second time I've said that word. Compartmentalized to that. So it's all containerized. So I'm going to call this the geolocation. You can see it's created its own application scope as part of that. Geolocate. I like that. Get location from IP address. Let's create and continue. This is the first time I'm doing this, by the way. So I've only seen it in the video that we've seen previously, or said about previously. This is the first time me trying this, so if this doesn't go so well, then you know why. So, right, so our first thing we need to do, so how do you want to build your spoke? So we've got two options. You could actually go down a manual route. Interesting. So in which case you'll start to create actions manually. So no doubt you would need to specify, rest step and all the kind of parsing and things like that. What I want to see if we can get out of this is how much of that sort of steps do we need to add into our spoke if we've got a specification for it already. So this is where the value is really. So we'll say specification. And now we want to kind of import our specification because we don't have it right now. We have it at the moment on a website which we need to kind of either copy and paste from. I do not know if I need to store that as a file. Potentially I do. A connection alias we may also require as well. Interesting. So if we import new, so we can import from a URL or from JSON or YAML. Okay, and paste, and I'll go import. So hopefully that will. There we go. IP geolocation API 1.0.0. Fantastic. Right, and presumably would also need an alias. So this can just be free text for now. Let's just call this geo lock alias. And we have different types. API key or basic auth or OAuth. This is API key, so we'll keep it to that. And create. And then, I guess, generate operations. Let's see what happens. Right, so this is what I've seen from their video is, if you remember back to the Swagger, it came up with all the different endpoints available to us. So this specification isn't like a one-to-one. There's not a specification per endpoint. You can have a collection of different endpoints as part of an overall specification. So the fact that it's only just brought back one is just because there was only one available in there. So you have one endpoint, and for each of those, it's going to create an action for us. So this is all about getting retrieving the location of an IP address. And what I would say as well is that I do need to zoom out a touch, I think, so we can see the whole screen. That's probably a bit better. You don't have to select all of them right here and now. You can go back to this and you can add actions afterwards. So if you want to focus one by one, you can absolutely do that. So I'm going to go to publish, and then I will now see what we have. So no actions available. Oh, okay, there it is. It's come out of nowhere. So here's our actions which have been created from this particular specification for geolocation. And presumably we can go ahead and create manual ones from here as well. Yep. Or we can go back to that OpenAPI specification and go back and choose a different one which we didn't from previous. I like that. That's cool. So if we go into the get, I'm really interested now, what is it going to automatically create for us? So if you remember, like by default in the past, if you're creating actions in to create your integrations and there's no existing spoke, then you'd have to do all these steps manually, wouldn't you? You'd have to set up the likes of your flows, your actions, your aliases, all of your different kind of endpoints and your rest steps and the parsing and everything like that. It takes time. What this has done, and I'm going to go step by step here, is it's brought in our inputs. Fantastic. It's brought in the likes of the three things that we needed, so the fields, the IP address, and API key, which was mandatory. We also have a step. So we've got an OpenAPI step, which is automatically connected to our geolocation alias. It's got the API operation there. It's got all the key steps there. Fantastic. Obviously, what it hasn't done is added any further steps for any kind of parsing, or what you actually want to do with it, which kind of makes sense because everyone would be different at this stage what you want to do with that data. I'm not going to take this any further in terms of adding more steps to this. I just want to test it and make sure we're getting a response. So interestingly, we probably need to define in here the base URL, which would probably be our endpoint. So it's created this alias because of that wizard that we went through, geoloc alias. And presumably with this alias we would need to add in the connection information. Now it could have done this step automatically, couldn't it? It had the server information in there. Maybe that was one of the types in the list here that it doesn't actually currently support. Oh, look at that. Boom.
Wow.
So this is like I say, this is work in progress. I'm sure if it supported the server object from that JSON payload, it may have automatically created this connection for us. So we probably need to pull this information out of here. So it does have this at the top, as this would be our connection in our alias. So if we go back to alias and create a brand new connection, whoops. So let's just call this geoloc con, and just chuck in the URL, the connection alias there. So I'm not sure if we need to specify the credential in here because it's just an API key. It was in one of the inputs, so maybe I could just put the API key as the input when we test this. But essentially, I think that is done. So let's just test this out, shall we? If we go to test, we need to put in the API key. Let's go back to here, copy, and into here, and paste. And we need an IP address, so I'm going to go with my one again, so 86.131. 131 again. And let's go for city, and run. Fingers crossed. This should work, presumably. We've seen how easy that is. Presumably at this stage you would then add in any additional steps and what you want to do with that information. Maybe as an output you wanted to send this back to like a subflow. So inline response. So we have got a good response in there. And let's see if we've got this response we're expecting. Response body, city, Bury St Edmunds. There we go. So we've now proved that end to end now. So we've been able to connect it in with our connection alias. It's pulled in that base URL. It'd be lovely to see that in one of the next updates, by the way. So imagine all that all taken care of. Boom. That would be pretty cool. Or maybe in the wizard you could also put in the likes of the the credentials or API key at that stage. That'd be awesome. Is there any outputs that's come of this? Oh, look at that. And it's got all the outputs in there in terms of the response body. Brilliant. Which means this is all encompassing. That's fantastic. That means you can call this now from the likes of a flow or a subflow, and you're going to get this information back without having to do any more admin to this action. So hopefully you agree with me that that's fantastic in terms of functionality. I love it, how quick that was. Like I say, this was something I haven't even gone through once as a demo to myself to prove it all works absolutely fine. I encourage you to try this yourselves. Have a look at the OpenSource APIs. Those who haven't done integrations much in the past, go and have a try at this. Honestly, we didn't have to delve too deep into the code, did we really? I only wanted to show you from a Swagger perspective how this is all kind of made up. So have a look into OpenAPI specifications. You can see what it kind of means from the right hand side here. You got all you needed is a URL. We didn't even need to save this as a JSON file, so that was cool. Put a URL in, see these actions automatically create, or these spokes automatically create, and then you're off. You're off and working with them straight away. I love it. I think it's fantastic. Thank you to Durav and Ashutosh for sharing this functionality with us all. Hopefully this will also inspire you out there to give this a go. So I will see you now in the next video.